I'm here with Dr. Ben Neale and Dr. George-Davey Smith. They're co-moderating a session on a very important paper. So, George-Davey, break it down for us.
Yeah, so this paper was published in 1918 by R.A. Fisher, who is a foundational statistician and also a foundational population geneticist. And at the time he wrote this paper, the field was in disarray, in the UK in particular. There's huge arguments between two groups of geneticists, and the arguments were heated, and they were essentially about could the strength of association between parents and offspring for traits like height, for example, could those be generated by a large number of Mendelian factors, which could have small effect? Could they generate that association? Or did it need to come about through some other mechanism, a non-Mendelian mechanism? The paper was rejected and it was going to be published in the Eugenics Review because Fisher's friend, Leonard Darwin, who was Charles Darwin's son and the president of the Eugenics Association, in fact had stimulated Fisher to do this work because Darwin had got into an argument with Pearson, where Pearson had been very publicly insulting about statements Darwin had made, and this had actually led to Fisher developing these mathematical solutions, partly as a defence of Darwin. And in the end, Leonard Darwin paid for the paper to be published in the Transactions of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. So it was a vanity publication appearing 2 years after it was submitted. And it's for that reason we're having this centenary celebration in 2016 rather than 2018, because the paper was finished and was essentially known about by 1960.
Okay, thanks for giving us all the background. Great. Dr. Ben Neale, so tell us why you're bringing this paper to 2016 and why is it so important that attendees see it?
So I think it's really difficult to overstate how important this paper is. I mean, it is, as George says, truly foundational. It launched an entire community, an entire discipline, and in the kind of subsequent 100 years since it was originally formulated and submitted, the kinds of experiments that we do as geneticists, in particular when we look at complex traits, things like height and diabetes and schizophrenia, every analysis that we do supports the basic premise of this theoretical work. So in a sense, this is the sort of theoretical underpinnings of the universe of genetics. It's sort of similar to the kinds of laws of relativity that Einstein put together in terms of its foundational aspects for the entire discipline.
If you got to choose what people take away from this, when they walk out that door, what do you hope that they take?
So I think that the most important thing is really this polygenic inheritance. I think that there's an awful lot of debate still today about how much many small genetic effects influence many complex traits. I think that argument is still raging to a certain extent, and there's still certainly a role for what we might think of as Mendelian and near Mendelian models for certain human diseases, but for the vast majority of the major public health relevant diseases like schizophrenia and diabetes, we really have to confront this polygenicity, and heritability and the ways of thinking about heritability are the real key deliverables from the session for how to really drive forward our understanding of these kinds of disorders.
Well, I'm sure your session will be a success. You two obviously know what you're talking about. Best of luck in the next few days.